Takes a second. Awesome, we're live.
Yay!
Yay. Welcome to both of you, and welcome to those of you watching. My name's Amanda. I'm here from One More Page Books in Arlington, Virginia. Coming to you live from the bookstore itself, and we're so excited to bring you this graphic memoir event tonight with the lovely Malaka Gharib and Robin Ha. We're so excited to have both of you guys. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Do you mind if I do a little intro for y'all before I let you two take it away?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I printed it out because I think printed paper is still important, even in these times of virtual events and Zoom and things like that. All right, so we'll start with Malaka. Malaka Gharib is an artist, journalist, and writer based in Washington, D.C. She is the founder of the Runcible Spoon, a food zine, and the co-founder of the D.C. Art Book Fair. She lives in a row house with her husband Darren and her 9-year-old rice cooker, which I love.
Maybe it's 10 years old now, 11 years old.
Ooh, even better. And then we have the lovely Robin Ha. Robin grew up reading and drawing comics. At 14, she moved to the United States from Seoul, Korea. After graduating from the Rhode Island School of Design with a BFA in illustration, she moved to New York City and started a career in the fashion industry. Her work has been published in independent comic anthologies, including Secret Identities and The Strumpet, as well as in the pages of Marvel Comics and Heavy Metal magazine. She is, in addition to this book, the author of the New York Times bestselling comic recipe book, Cook Korean, a comic book with recipes. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pull myself off the stream and let you two take it away with some readings from your books.
Sure.
Okay. I'll be watching, so I'll be close by. Don't worry.
Sure. Robin, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'd like to read a few pages from chapter 3, which is about choosing my name. Okay. Let me see. Is it shared now? Can you see the images?
Mm-hmm. They're small, though.
Okay. Is it bigger now?
Still kind of small.
Okay. We just did this, so I don't know why. Okay, let's see.
I'll pop back in for technical support.
Okay, I'm gonna do share screen, and application window, share.
Okay, I got you. Adding to the stream. See, it looks like we're still just in your file folder, so if you could just click on the image to sort of open the individual image, we should be okay.
It is opened on my screen.
Ooh, fun.
Is it open there?
Maybe
Just the file folder.
It's still not open?
Maybe you have to select the open file when you first move to share screen. So unshare your screen, open up the file, make sure it's open, and then select the open file when you reopen again.
Got it. Share screen, application window. Okay. Is that working now?
Let's see.
Yes!
Yay!
Finally, okay. So, chapter 3, my name is Robin. Are you ready to start your new school next week? No. Don't worry, Ashley will help you, won't you, Ashley? Okay. You should pick an American name. It will help you blend in at school. American name? I always dreaded the first day of school in Korea because Kim Sun-hee, yes. Lee Hyun-soo, yes. Hachuna, yes. Ha 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 ha. My Korean name, Chuna, is an unusually old-fashioned name, which is equivalent to names like Bertha or Myrtle in English. For real? That's your name? There goes Mrs. Chunja again. Ha ha ha. Besides being unfashionable, there were other reasons for me to hate my name. Mom, why did you do this to me? Well, ask your father. It was his family tradition. The first syllable of my given name, Chun, was often used as the name of country bumpkin characters in comedy shows and TV. No kids ever forgot my name. Hachuna! Remember me? We went to the summer camp together when we were 7. It was like a curse that followed me everywhere. But in America, I could finally get rid of this terrible name. This was my chance to start my life all over again with a new identity. Things like this only happened in movies or comic books, and now it was happening to me. No one knows her past. No one knows her name. She's a mystery. Who are you? Please, I must know your name. My name is... I had never thought of what American name I would like to have. This time, I could pick the coolest name ever, but I had no idea what names were trendy. My step-cousin, stepsister, and I looked through their yearbooks for inspiration. How about Sarah or Jenny? Oh, too girly. Courtney? They all sound too girly to me. There are some boys' names that girls can have. We picked a handful of gender-neutral names from the yearbook. I like them all. Well, you have to choose one. I was always drawn to androgynous female characters in Korean and Japanese comics because I was a tomboy too. My step-cousins taught me this American thing. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. Robin, that's a pretty name. You'll fit in right away at school. Really? You think so? The R sound doesn't exist in Korean, so I spent all night practicing my new name. Robin, 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 Robin. But no matter how many times I said it out loud, I just couldn't picture myself with this new name.
You know what? My name is old-fashioned too. In the Malaka is also considered like an old person's name, and it is. It's an old-fashioned name in Egypt. So
Yeah.
I feel.
So do you know why your dad wanted to give you an old-fashioned name?
Yeah, my grandmother's name is Maluka, which is an old-fashioned name. So it's a derivative of that.
Okay. Yeah, same with mine. Like, so in Korea, there's a tradition of like families having the same middle name, and it changes in different generations. So unfortunately for girls in my generation, in my dad's side, they all have Chun as their middle syllable.
Oh.
All of us are basically doomed because we were unfortunate to born in that generation who happens to have that middle syllable in our name.
Well, is it cool now?
Huh?
Is it cool now? Because
no, it's still one of the cool old names that comes back. It will never be cool, ever.
Oh God! All right.
Yeah,
beautiful.
It's okay. Now I love my name. I mean, it's such a unique name because, like, most people don't have that name in my generation because it's such
Do you go by your Korean name ever? Just curious.
My mom sometimes call me Chuna. Because she always called me Chuna for my. But other than her, nobody calls me by that name.
Oh, wow! Yeah. So you really once you became Robin forever.
Well, in the first few years of being in America, like Chuna was still my legal name because I didn't get my citizenship until I was like 20 or 21. So like my legal name, like still in school yearbook, was Chuna. So like, teachers would call me Chuna, in the beginning of the school year, but then I'll correct them, like, call me Robin.
Oh, wow. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing your beautiful book. It's nice to hear it in your own words.
Thank you. Well, how about you?
Sure. All right. So here's I'm going to read the high school chapter of my book. It's my favorite chapter. All right. So in high school, the class president was Korean and the prom queen Filipino. At a school as diverse as Cerritos High, the most important question you could ask was, what are you? There was Brenda, who was Indian American, Trisha, who was Taiwanese American, Yalda, Iranian American, Kyle, Japanese American, and many other cultures. In the meantime, it was one of the quickest ways to understand each other's cultures. What are you? I'm Pakistani and Muslim. Muslim and South Asian. You must be Pakistani. No, I'm Indian. Oh, Pakistani. From which part? My dad's from Tanzania. Isn't it against your dad's religion to marry someone like your mom? Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women. But isn't Palestine not its own rightful country? I know, right? Wow. Are you white? No, I'm Armenian. Oh my God, I'm half Filipino too. When people ask me this question, I found it really hard to answer. What are you? Well, I'm Egyptian Filipino. I grew up with my Filipino family here in Cerritos. I eat rice every day, and I went to Catholic school. But my dad is Muslim and lives in Egypt. I spend my summers with him. I can understand Tagalog and Arabic. Isaic, kumusta ka? So I guess both? Well, I kind of feel more Filipino because that's who I spent more time with. That's cool, I guess. I'm just regular old Filipino. Like all kids in America, we were very heavily influenced by TV, movies, and pop culture. Total Request Live, Buffy, Dawson, and all my friends in the WB, The Simpsons, and hanging out at Tower Records and Borders for hours. I was especially into the TV show Felicity. I wanted what she had, a circle of smart gal pals who were into songwriting, getting good grades, and witchcraft. Don't touch my box. A love triangle between guys like Ben and Noel. Let's be serious, Ben. We all know I'm the cuter one. Sophistication in the form of anthropology sweaters and Dean and DeLuca coffee. What I really wanted, though, was to meet real-life white people, and Cerritos had hardly any. In freshman year, I had a mega crush on a boy named Jorge. He wasn't white, but he was close enough. Jorge. He was Mexican, Portuguese, American. He had fair skin. He had 8-inch frosted tips. He had a skater punk look. I wanted so bad for him to like me back. But of course, he paid no attention to me. Being one of the whitest boys in school, he really had his pick of the litter. That's him with all those girls. That's sad. I had no freaking clue where this obsession came from. I just knew as a 16-year-old that white was better than whatever the hell I was. Why white people are so cool, according to high school me. They're real Americans. They do normal stuff like eat sandwiches for lunch. They're on TV and in the movies. They have perfect American accents. Howdy, y'all. I have a lot of confidence. They're richer than everyone else, obviously. And they don't smell like fried garlic and fried fish in the morning. Okay, if I'm being honest, maybe I did have some theories as to why I thought this way. Maybe it was because at the time I wanted white boys to like me, that everyone in my town was brown and I couldn't help but feel that being white made you extra special. 2, please. That's like us at a Chinese restaurant seeing white people go into the most Asian restaurant. I liked white people stuff. Wait, people said I liked white people stuff? Weezer, Kurt Vonnegut, Daria, Jonathan Franzen, Donnie Darko. Or maybe it was because I was taught from an early age that everything white people did was better. I saw a white woman wear this at the airport, so I bought one. Such fine taste. How do I look? Ma, you look like $1 million. Dang, it was probably a combo of all those things. By the end of sophomore year, I'd heard enough to know it about myself. What is it? You got something to say? You're whitewashed. At our school, the term whitewash had a very specific meaning. It meant you were trying to act white as a way to be cool. So I like white stuff. So what? It means you're a big fat poser. In 2002, being called a poser was even worse than being called whitewashed. It meant you were fake, a phony. Ugh, if I didn't have that trig quiz tomorrow, I'd totally skip school. I wasn't trying to be white. I mean, just look at me. Whitewashed and poser were just a few of the labels I learned at Cerritos High. There was also banana, Asian on the outside, white on the inside, aka Twinkie. Egg, white on the outside, Asian on the inside. Am I an egg? Fob, fresh off the boat. Fobby, fresh off the boat. E, basically, immigrant parents. AZN, cool word for Asian. A very popular word in AAM screen names. The lingo didn't really give me a sense of belonging. If I had to make up a term for myself, it would be za'atar-covered onigiri, rosewater-flavored mochi, falafel surprise, inside there's a little chunk of spam. Ha ha ha.
Spam's the best.
Yes. Even amongst minorities, I was a minority. Everyone in high school hung out with people based on clubs, sports, ethnicity. Who would be my friend? A social map of Cerritos High School. I fact-checked this actually with old classmates. So next to the quad, you had the Korean girls from the US, and then you had the Korean girls from Korea sitting in 2 different umbrellas. You had the popular Korean kids sit on the event stage. You had the student kids and student government on the other side. You had the Filipino dancers, Filipino athletes, and the Portuguese mafia, all by the language arts buildings. And you also had the Taiwanese Magic the Gathering kids next to the chem lab. Sometimes I wondered if I looked a little bit more Filipino, would it have been easier for me to hang out with the Filipinos? If they knew I was Filipino, maybe they would ask me to join their group. When my sister Min Min, who was full Filipino, came to Cerritos 6 years later, her social life was sorted. Hey, do you want to hang out with us? Sure. She ate lunch with all the Filipino hip-hop kids, joined the Filipino club, and dated Filipino guys. In contrast, I was ethnically ambiguous and whitewashed to boot. I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you tell me? Damn, it's too real! So I hung out with anyone who would have me. A motley crew of punk kids. The group, as we called ourselves, came from all different backgrounds, but we had lots in common. Stuff we loved. We loved playing music, we loved punk, we loved making zines and comics, and we made fun of posers. Yo, have you heard of the band Muskrat Lemon Juice? Yeah, duh. You're a loser, I just made that band up. In the end, I got the label I'd been searching for, most unique. It gave me so much validation. At school, I always felt like an outsider, a misfit, a weirdo. But maybe that was totally okay. Maybe that's what made me cool. All right.
I love that.
Thank you.
It really brings back a lot of memories from my high school too.
Does it? What is it bringing memories of?
Well, so I went to McLean High School in McLean, Virginia. So it's not as diverse as your high school, it sounds like, but we did have a lot of international kids because it's so close to DC. Mm-hmm. So we definitely had, Korean kids from Korea sitting in like one corner. In high school, they usually hung out in the library.
Uh-huh.
And like they'll never, really respect the quiet role. So, always get like shushed by other people. And like, the Americanized Korean kids just like basically just hung out with American kids wherever they were.
Mm-hmm.
But like I couldn't really fit into either, which is really weird because I should have been able to fit in with the Korean, like the FOP kids in library. But like because I was in Alabama for a year, like I kind of got a little like off the trend like a bit, like Korean kids are very trendy, so they wear like really fancy trendy clothes, they listen to like all kinds of new K-pop, and
you weren't cool enough for them.
Huh?
And you weren't cool enough for them.
No, I felt uncool because I didn't know any of these things that these kids knew about, and they were like so much better dressed than me. They wore a lot of makeup, and like I was just like wearing a jeans and t-shirt and reading comic books. So I just didn't feel like I could approach them. So it could be more of my part being like really afraid to approach them in the first place.
Uh-huh.
And they thought probably like, oh, she doesn't come near us, so she must not be Korean. So a lot of people thought that I was Chinese or Japanese, and that's why I didn't talk to them in the beginning.
One thing I think about is like how when I was reading your book about like how you ended up in comics, because like I always think about like how did I end up in comics, and sometimes I feel like it's like a great comics and zines are like the thing that people who feel like they're outsiders do to like get lost in your own world.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking backwards, it makes me feel like maybe that immense sense of like insecurity and like wanting to belong just like propelled me to be a cartoonist, which is like kind of sad. But it's
what is really interesting is that like you got into comics basically talking about your real life, Mm-hmm. So you were like making zines about things that you were, really into in your actual life.
Mm-hmm.
But like the reason I got into comic was the pure escapism. Like all the comics I used to love are like fantasy, science fiction, like nothing to do with my life. So for me, it was like a way for me to completely like go away from my real life and just like get into things that like I can forget myself about.
Yeah.
Whereas yours was like, it was like a method for you to express yourself in a way you weren't able to, like in your something like that.
Fair assessment, actually. I almost felt it like I started doing like music zines. So we're not even talking about our questions that we're supposed to ask, but like I find this interesting. But you know, I think I started my comics and zines like hobby out of like cutting up magazines and making my own like music magazines, my own zines. And I think that for me, it was like an extension of clothing almost. Like you're completely right. I never thought of it this way, but like I dressed punk, but I also wanted to like have my own world expressed in my zine, which I gave to people. That for me was like an extension of my aesthetic, I guess, or interest.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you kind of kept doing that, you know, even into your adult life. And, you know, like I knew you through Runcible Spoon.
Yeah.
So like that's where I heard your name for the first time. And it was like amazing collection of beautifully made zine. Like, I mean, it's like, it's one of my favorite zine ever. So like I could definitely see like, you know, it's very like zines are supposed to be very information driven, but you're more like aesthetically driven. So it was like definitely like your way of visual expression on top of like information that you like to talk about.
Well, the other thing too, Robin, I was thinking, again, this is like we're not even touching questions, but like, how did we get from food to memoir? Like, I'm so interested in like that, like, how did that happen for you?
I have no idea how this happened for me. Because I mean, if you read my cookbook in the beginning, like I talk about, I never used to cook in my life until I went to college, basically. I mean, even in college, I did not cook. And I thought of myself as like almost just like a fine artist. Like I only just like to draw, you know, or paint. And I never had time or interest in cooking. But it was only when I moved to New York as an adult and I had to feed myself, then I was like, oh no, I have to learn to make these stuff that I can't always go out to eat anymore. You know, everything is very expensive. And I was living in Brooklyn where it was pretty far from Asian restaurants. So like it was like a pretty unpredictable journey that led me into actually publishing a cookbook comic book as my first, you know, graphic novel.
Wow.
But it's like going with the flow. Like I never planned this, but it kind of came my way. You know, like I used to do a blog on Tumblr to just have fun with drawing, you know, quick recipe comics. Because a lot of people love to eat Korean food, and they ask me, because I'm Korean and sometimes I bring my food to my work. So I was like, oh, this could be a fun side project. I never thought much about it, but then it became the biggest thing I've ever made. So it's, yeah, I mean, life is very strange.
I think it's like almost like just do what is interesting to you, and hopefully good things will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get into, I mean, you seem to, I mean, did you always like to draw food as a kid too, or is it a new thing?
No, I think I did music zines exclusively until the end of college. I had a music magazine in college with my friend, who actually most of the staffers live in DC, which is insane. But I had a music magazine in college, and then after college, I decided that I was over music and I wanted to be sophisticated in the world of food and restaurants.
Really?
And that was just like my interest. Yeah, exactly.
I think that like music is considered cooler, isn't it? I mean, food is more grown up, I guess.
The true story is that I wanted to work in a food magazine after college, but in 2008 the recession hit, and my dream food magazine offered me an internship, but I couldn't afford moving to New York and starting the internship, and there was no guaranteed for a full-time job. So I thought, well, I'm interested in food now, and why don't I go ahead and just make my own food magazine? If you can't give me a job, then if I can't get a job, then I'll find another way to like scratch that itch of wanting to like write and draw about food. And like what I liked about the Runcible Spoon was that we actually it was like almost like social commentary on how serious people were taking food at the time. In 2009 and 2010, there were a lot of like really, really fancy food blogs and a lot of precious, white linen restaurants and like a lot of tweezers putting like little things on food. And like, we just decided to like turn it upside down and make it very punk. And I think the Runcible Spoon is one of my favorite projects. But like you said, like you ride the wave of your interests, and like I was like, I'm over the Runcible Spoon. I want to start something new and different now.
Do you have any other like idea? I mean, are you gonna keep doing a zine project like that, or is it something completely different?
Well, now the thing that what's interesting about zines is that like I think that I'm like trying to push the limits of the form. I actually didn't know how much I liked the 8-page mini zine format.
The little one.
The little ones, like I really like this form because it forces you to like say what you need to say and create the world that you want to create in very few pages and images. And I really like making them so super tiny. I really like the challenge of that. And I guess like what it almost feels like, my work feels like these days, it feels like I'm saying, I'm like very inspired by Jenny Holzer's like big maximalist statements. And so I don't know. I guess like there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I've been trying to explore it and trying to like push the boundaries of this form, I guess.
And I think it's very interesting because that format to me is very close to Instagram.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you can only post 10 images on Instagram and it's tiny. You're looking at it on your phone. So I think it translates very well to like, social media right now. And I wanted to say like Runcible Spoon, like you did it for like almost 10 years or something, right? It's been going on.
Long time.
And I think it's really interesting to see how like the food blogging has changed so much within those decades. Like, like nobody really cared that much about food like 10 years ago. Like it was like very niche thing. But now it's like everywhere, and there's so many videos and like bloggers and like big production of these like home cooking, but like kind of fancy, like that kind of stuff. So I almost feel like even like my comic, even though I did not plan it, I did not plan to make a cookbook, but something was in the air for sure, that if you are, open to it, I feel like you could kind of like unconsciously grab onto it and see like this is actually fun thing and it can be important thing too,
Right.
So,
what do you think your next project is going to be? Are you signed it with HarperCollins to do 2 books, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm working on a YA graphic novel with the same publisher, Bowser and Bray. It's a complete 180 from all the previous work I've done. So it's a fiction. It's set in 16th century Korea.
Wow.
So there's, if you like those K-drama with like costumes, that's what I'm doing right now.
It's so popular. There's so many historical dramas. It's crazy.
It's a lot. I mean, and that's also very cool too, because like I never thought that those K-dramas will be so big in America. Like when I moved here, K-pop was just kind of trickling in, but it was never like a huge thing. And then like I think in the mid 2000s it started getting really big. So like the amount of interest about Korean drama right now is just like
gotta ride that wave, Robin.
I mean, this story is like it's been kind of in my back of my head for a long time, but I just never. I mean, everything so far has been like really good timing for me. So hopefully, when I'm able to finish this story and get it published, a lot of people will be more familiar with those type of K-drama where there's costume and like, and then background of that time period, 16th century Korea. It's very different from modern Korea. It's like like the social structure was very different. There were, kings and queens, and also they're like very, how do you call it, like caste of people, and women's life in Korea was very restricted. Like we were treated as property, basically, and
Wow.
we had to cover ourselves and everything.
What's the gist of the story? I'm very curious.
So it's based on a legend of Kumiho. So Kumiho is a very popular folktale character. So it's a nine-tailed fox, and she's usually a villainess in the story, where she's 1,000 years old and she has this magical power. So she transforms herself into a beautiful maiden and like lure innocent men into her den and kills them and eat their liver, all that stuff. So she's always like viewed as like the evil, like almost like a succubus kind of character. But I wanted to write a story kind of from her perspective, and like
So good.
yeah, I mean, I just started to actually draw the layouts. Like I just finished writing the extended synopsis, and I'm just drawing them like in like in layout form, very very loose right now. But it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it, and like I get to
Great.
so it's really fun.
When is the pub date? When is the pub date?
Oh, we don't know yet. I just started drawing. So I gave my editor like beginning of 2021. But I mean 2022. So it's gonna take at least a year for me to finish. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so great.
Comics takes a long time.
It's a long time. I think that and then you read it in like 5 minutes and you're just like,
I know, right? I mean, that's a good thing if people say like, oh, I read it in one sitting.
yeah.
That it was really good, but then at the same time, like it took me like years to draw this, I mean, what do you think was the most difficult part for you to draw your memoir? What?
Well, I think that, I attended one of your first events in DC. I think it was, I forgot which comic book store it was in.
Phantom Comics.
Yeah. And, you said that, like you wouldn't do more because it was emotionally difficult.
Yeah.
I think that was the thing that surprised me the most about how, like, even though our books are both like pretty light, they're like no heavy, sad details are revealed about our lives. I think it's the constant examination of yourself and life, and I think that I like learned things about myself that I didn't necessarily love. So I think that was the part. I ended up having to like, and then also it's like working just on one project endlessly, and then not being like friends because you have a deadline to work toward. It was very isolating. And I think that in my next book project, I would like do things so differently, completely differently, maybe, hopefully.
How do you think you can change that though? I mean,
I think
a lot of cartoonists are feeling the same issue. Or a lot of cartoonists would say the same thing about how lonely and isolating it is to be a comic artist,
I think that like these are like, I don't know if these are, okay, here's what I would do differently next time. I'm actually working on a new book. I'm on the cusp of finalizing I think I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'll say it, whatever. I'm on the cusp of like finalizing a new book deal, which is another memoir about my summer. About my summers in Egypt. I don't know how to write fiction, so I'm a little I'm gonna have to talk to you about
like, yeah, I'd love to hear. That's awesome. You briefly talk about that. Is it the same the summer that you were talking about? And I was there.
But I went back to Egypt like maybe 10 or 15 times since I was growing up. So I wanted to like examine as an adult what those summers meant to me, what they meant to my relationships, and like how they molded me or changed me as a person, if there was anything that happened. I think the things I would do differently is I would continue to hire a colorist. I don't want a color because I feel like I'm not very good at it. I feel like I would take a long time. And I feel like after drawing a book, I don't know how people color. Do you color your own book?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want to do it. I'm too scared.
I'm such a control freak. I can't trust anybody.
Really?
I would if I can't trust anybody or get a really good colorist, you know?
Oh my gosh. And then I would like go to therapy at the same time as drawing the book. So that's the other thing I would do. And I would take time off of work. I would try to like take leave to like just work on the book. So I'm not doing it at night after work, which was very hard.
Yeah. So that's a difference because you had like a daytime job, a real job, and I did it full time. So I was able to, I mean, there are days that I didn't leave the house for like a week or two because I was like under the crunch. But my schedule wasn't like I had to work at some other job for 8 hours and then come home and work 4 hours. I'm like, oh, that would be crazy.
Yeah, I think that towards the end I was like like one little thing would happen during work and I would like just be crying and be like, I can't do this.
Yeah, that's a lot of stress. Yeah. Please quit. I mean, not quit, but like take a break from your job.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. This is great. This is awesome. Well, I guess you ask them the questions. I have some questions for you.
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's see. Oh, this is a question that I was curious about. So your family members who were the ones that like didn't want to hang out with you when you first moved to America, what do they think about you now?
I have no idea.
Oh, you're talking
them. So like since I left Alabama, I basically just kept in touch with my friend Jessica. That's my real name. But, you know, the friend I made in comic class.
Yes.
She's the only one who like I kind of kept in touch with. And like, you know, as I grew older, like I kind of lost touch with a lot of people. Like even the friends I had in Korea, I don't know where they are and what they're doing. So yeah, I don't know. But Jessica, she read my book. I sent her a copy and she loved it. So yeah.
That's great. That's all the vindication you need.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like we were so young. I was a 14-year-old and, you know, my cousins, step-cousins and my stepsisters were all teenagers. So, you know, they're all grown up and they probably have family of their own. And, you know.
Well, all we need to do is Google the Robin Ha and see what she's been up to.
Right? Yeah, I wonder if they will be surprised to see me. Yeah. How about you? Do you like, I mean, are your friends in high school, you know, that you drew in your memoir, do they have any thoughts about how they were drawn or anything like that?
Well, I called everybody who I drew in the book and used by name and just told them that I was, you know, hadn't talked to these people in like 15 years and told them I was writing the book and I would like to use their name. And most people were very, you know, very supportive of being included in the book. I think that like what's been fun is like people in my life who just like, I didn't know you had a crush on me. There's a boy named Jonathan who I liked in elementary school. And like, I think some of them were like, whoa, like didn't know that, which is kind of funny. But I think that for people who went to my high school and I think, well, we spent so much time hating going to an Asian school, like an Asian Latino school, and like talking a lot of shit about how it sucked and we wished that there were more white people. But looking at it in hindsight, I think that everyone who I've talked to, I shared the book on, you know, we have like a class of 2004 Facebook page for people who went to my high school. A lot of people were like, you know, really, like it was a really special place. Like it was a really special time and we didn't realize how good we had it, like getting to learn about each other. And I think I was telling you before, like learning about HOT from my fellow Korean from Korea friends. I even had Korean friends from South America who had their own group. It was
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
We had
They-
like
Portuguese. Like I know some Korean people who were born in Brazil, which is great.
these are people who were born in Argentina and Peru, and they hung out and they played like soccer together. They were like very they were very Latino, like had a lot of like culture.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think that like now in hindsight, I think collectively it's really nice to have a place where some to look at your history in a different way and have a tangible manifestation of that. Yeah.
It's always like that, when you have it, you don't realize how special it is until, many years that has been passed. Like, I think that's a good thing about writing a memoir. Like, I mean, it's very painful and it's very difficult to dive into those areas where like you kind of put it off because it like hurts you or you can't process it. But like, it kind of forces you to look at everything as a whole, like your life as a whole. And like how certain things that like was so upsetting to you, like to realize it was like actually not such a bad thing, or actually it's not as big as you thought, or those things.
Like looking back on it through the eyes of like adulthood and experience and like life, like your experiences in life, you realize like, dang, I probably overreacted then, Yeah.
All teenagers are prone to that.
Exactly.
Let me ask you a question. Let's see. How did you choose which topic or memories to draw in your memoir?
That's a really good question. Well, I think that one of the first things that I Googled when I Googled like how to write a memoir, that was like the first thing that I did. And one of the pieces of advice, I need to find this woman and thank her, but it was like, you don't need to tell your like dirty secrets. The point is, like, you're using yourself as like, you're using your anecdotes as a way to illuminate something about the human experience. And like, it doesn't have to be through one specific story. There are many, 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 many stories you can use to say that same thing that you wanted to say. Mm-hmm. So, like, to illustrate that my mom was a hard worker and was like poor, like I don't have to say like the sad story of how she like, I can just find some other way to say it. Like I can show her us eating like a simple meal of Spam and rice for dinner. And that could help illustrate, what our financial situation might have been. There are like a lot of anecdotes that you can use in place. And so what I did in choosing the stories I wanted to tell was try to think about what I felt safe and comfortable in sharing about not just myself, but like other people. And I worked with an editor who would I would cycle through anecdote ideas. Like, for example, he would say, you need to have tension between you and Darren in this scene. And so can you think of a time when you and Darren got into a fight and that you'd feel comfortable sharing in the book? So I would just like come up with like a list of ideas and like spew them out to my editor. And he'd be like, no, that's not believable. Oh, that's too intimate. Like, why don't we settle on this safe one? And that's how I did it. I mean, like, yeah, I'll stick to that for the next time around as well.
Yeah, that sounds very different from how I went about it. But that sounds like a really good advice for anybody who tries to write a memoir, is to like, only talk about something that you feel safe talking about. Because I think a lot of people feel pressure to talk about a lot of things that they are not comfortable with. And that is like a big no-no. Like once you get it published, it's out of your hand, and people can say all kinds of things about your book. And, it's a very vulnerable position to be in, to have everything shown.
Yeah. I think one thing that my mom said was that, like, sure, one of her criticisms was you made me out to look so poor and like that I was struggling a lot. And I felt like I was ready. I wanted to, sometimes if like the story is so, it's like a trope that's so common in immigrant families, I feel like I was like, Mommy, that's a story that's like you're not the only person in the world with that story. Mm-hmm. So many people who have that story coming to America. You like take a number, is what I told her. So,
yeah. And it's so weird, like what kind of things people find offensive, you know?
What about you? What happened?
I don't remember exactly what I did. It was like initial pages that's not included in this book. It was axed because like my mom was so upset about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like before I actually pitched this book to an agent, like I had like a mini, like first chapter of this book, and it started with me in New York as a young adult, like living my life, and I drew my mom like really worrying about me a lot because I'm like the only daughter of her. So, and Asian mothers can be very overprotective too, like so like even though I wasn't doing anything crazy, like I wasn't like going out dancing all night or anything like that, my mom was very worried like that if something might have happened to me, because I'm in New York and New York is dangerous. So so I had like a little panel of like being annoyed with her because like I was like, why is she so worried? I'm all grown up, I'm living in New York. And like to me, that was just like one panel, like no big deal. It's just like a simple snippet of like our relationship right now, But for some reason, like my mom got really upset about it. She was like, oh, you make me sound like really paranoid. And like, she just really hated it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I completely took it out. So it's like that just like kind of made me think like, oh my God, like I never even thought that this was an offensive thing. But everybody looks at things differently and everybody has different ideas of like our past. So yeah, I mean, like my mom was very against me doing this memoir for a long time while I was working on it. So I had to make sure like to show her the manuscript way before I was able to finish it. So she has like a chance to like look at all the layout and take out things she doesn't want it.
I'm a little bit nervous about this memoir in Egypt because this is going to take place in like a part of the world that already has a lot of negative stereotypes and perceptions about Muslim women. So like it's going to take a lot of careful storytelling, and I also want to work more collaboratively with my mom and with my dad and stepmom who are going to be part of the book. So and there's also a barrier with my
told you they're okay with it, they're gonna work with you on it.
Yeah, they told me that they would, and I mean, like, who's to say? I mean, like, hopefully that's my girl.
I'm gonna tell you it's gonna be difficult.
I know. I anticipate it to be very difficult. I anticipate because they could be polite and saying like, oh, it's fine now, and then like they see things later, they're gonna be like, I don't like that.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do if you have a part that you really love? Like you really think this is such an important thing to put in your book, and then they're like, absolutely not. I hate that part.
Well, the one thing I have in my back pocket is that I was a really, really avid diary keeper when I was young. So like I have all these memories that are like already pre-written that I can just sort of like hopefully use for material. That's my like trump card. Like I just worry, like I hope that I don't have to use that, but like I don't know. Don't ask me that question, Robin.
Yeah, I know. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna make a right decision when it comes,
I hope so.
Let me ask you another question.
Oh wait, no, let me ask you a question.
Oh, okay. What are you gonna ask?
Oh, this is a question that I really wanted to ask you. You answered it a little bit in your conversation before, but at the book talk I went to, but I thought that I think it's an important answer that I want to hear you say. So what advice do you have for kids who might encounter first-generation immigrants in their school, and what are some of the things that you wish you could have told them when you were in high school? People, like other people.
I think kids in high school were actually better because they're a little more closer to being an adult. So like, I wasn't really bullied at all in high school. But in middle school, I was, because like my English was terrible. Like I could barely say hello. My name is Robin. So, and I was the only like non-American, like straight out of Asia in that school. So I think because my English was so limited that a lot of people basically thought I was stupid, that I couldn't understand them, and that means that I don't have anything in here, you know. So I think just having a respect for other person, whether or not they speak your language, I think is very important. And you know, like, people in that situation are very vulnerable, they're very lonely. So even if you help them a little bit, it will mean so much for them, you know. So like, just being kind to people, even if you think that like your kindness doesn't mean much, actually means a lot. So I think, like, just to be kind to people that, you know, are new to your area, new to your environment. And even if you feel like you can't help them because like you don't know how to communicate with them, like, there are ways. Like, kids, especially kids, they find way to communicate if you really want to be their friends, you know. So like in my case, when I went to a comic drawing class, because I was into comics and the people in that class were also into comics, we had something in common. So even if my English was like, you know, like ESL level 1, barely speaking, we found a way, like, somehow. So I think once you give it a chance and, you know, like, work together in overcoming the language barrier, you will find so many cool things to learn about the other person. So yeah, that would be my advice.
That's good advice. That's good advice for everyone. That's great advice.
Awesome. I wanted to talk about. Oh, is it already?
I love this, but I want to make sure we have some time to take a couple of audience questions, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure.
Perfect. So I've been keeping an eye on the chat, so I'm going to pop up. This is a fun StreamYard thing we can do.
Oh.
Yeah, right? So Jonathan wants to know, I think this was directed to Robin during the reading, but I'm curious for both of you. When you wrote your comic, did you also read the words out loud to see if it sounded okay, read out loud? We're wondering if comic creators do this or think much about it.
Yeah, I definitely do when I write dialogue. I do. I don't really read the captions out loud, but like in dialogue ways, I do sound it with my mouth and see if it sounds okay. But like my English is also, it's like, it's second language. So I don't know if I'm like hearing it right, but like at least I want to make sure that I feel like this is the right way to say things. Yeah.
I definitely don't, and I definitely should start doing that because that's probably a good practice.
Okay, and then we had a question from Sarah Ravioli coming up in a second. And this is for Malaka. If someone asked you, what are you today? Do you have a snappy comeback?
I actually, like, I'm on the, there's a lot of, there's a lot of like views on the what are you question, and I've always been on the side of liking the question, so I don't really have any snappy comebacks, because for me, my growing up with I know that the question, people of color have a different relationship with the question based on like how it's asked, and also like their experiences from their childhood or experiences growing up. When I was growing up, this question was a very earnest and earnest question asked among people of color as a way to get to know each other, each other's cultures very quickly. So at a really diverse place like where I grew up, you know, it would do you good to know the difference between whether somebody was from El Salvador or Mexico, totally different cultures, or Taiwan and China. So earnestly, we asked that question. I think in college, I wanted more people to ask me that question because people didn't ask. But I think in my 20s now, I feel like what are you doesn't really get asked. It's not, it's part of, like, I think maybe people would ask it in a nicer way, like, what is your cultural background, after getting to know you a little bit more. So I feel like it's become passe to ask that question just in general, but I don't think that it should stop people from being interested in people's cultural backgrounds.
Definitely. And then I liked this question a lot. Julia wanted to know if you had ever tried making the foods you described, specifically falafel with Spam. I would also get behind that.
I know I haven't tried it before, but I saw from my my friend's Facebook feed, not Facebook feed, Instagram feed, that he cut. This is something I've never seen before. Brilliant. He cut up the Spam into little cubes, which means more area when you fry it for it to be crispy, and then sauteed it and fried it with teriyaki sauce and sesame seeds, and then served it on top of rice. And
Wow.
I need to try that immediately.
So good.
Oh man, so it sounds like an easier way to eat spam musubi.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, everyone write that down. That was your recipe from today. Congratulations. And then we had a question for both of you. Pop that up. Was there a point, or what was the point where you would feel like really American for the first time?
That was a question that I wanted to ask Robin. So Robin, why don't you answer that first?
I think it's when I like started dreaming in English. I was like, wow. I think that happened like sometime in my college years. So after like maybe 5-6 years of being in America, I like started dreaming in English. So that means like I was becoming very comfortable with English, you know. And I also felt American, very American in New York. And also in Italy. So I went to Italy for a year when I was in college to study. So like, you know, I was the only Asian person in my program. Everybody else was like white American. But for some reason, like when I was interacting with other students, like apart from my own program who were American students, I was treated as like American student, you know, even though I'm Asian.
Wow.
And in Italy, like maybe because like not many people knew about Korea in Europe at the time, and like, you know, obviously they know a lot about America. So whenever I'm in like a party or something and I have to introduce myself to these new people, then I'll introduce them as like I'm a Korean American, or like I'm from America. I'll say that. So yeah, so that's when I felt like I was American.
Cool.
Awesome.
I don't know. It's a really hard question for me. I think that like I had so many for so long in my life, I always thought that you really had to be like white American or like whitewashed to be considered American, and like because of the color of my skin or my ethnicity, like I would never be able to attain that that title of calling myself American. And actually, only until I started writing my book and really examining what it meant to be American. I think I wrote something in my journal that was just basically like, aren't I American too? And I know it's kind of like a duh statement, but you really have to think about it and absorb it and examine that to be able to fully accept those words. Like, aren't I American too, to like have grown up in this country? And my experience as a Filipino Egyptian American is completely just as valid as any other person's in this country. Like by the fact that I'm living and growing, that I live in this country makes me an American person, and therefore I am. And I know that sounds like duh, but I think I just needed to think that through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. I think that's probably, unfortunately, all the time we have. I know there's a few questions that we didn't get to, but I know that our authors are on social media, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So feel free to reach out to them there to continue the discussion. But thank you guys so much. This was really fabulous.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you,
Is there anything else you want to shout out? Your books, upcoming projects, anything like that you want to shout out to people before we head out?
Read Robin's book.
My new book is not really there yet for me to promote.
Fair enough.
But this book is out. You can get it in independent bookstores near you.
Yes. And I put the link to buy both of these books from our page in the comments below, so you can buy them there. We've got book plates. It's great stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you guys both so much, and thank you everyone for watching. And have a great one. Thanks for coming to one more page.
Bye. Have a great night.